Alright, my turkey is currently in the oven, so I think I might have just enough time to pump this out. Stage 1 of the Starladder Budapest Major has wrapped up. It has been chaos, carnage, and generally some of the worst Counter-Strike I've had to sit through in quite a long time. There were many points that I was at the verge of crashing out and giving up on the sport entirely and going to do something more productive with my life. However, the sponsor payment hit and I realized there's not much else for me in this world, so I might as well stay committed. We are going to go over the 8 teams who made it through to Stage 2 and take a long, hard look at some of the notable teams who got sent home early. But just like we did for that Day 1 recap, we are going to keep things to a very condensed, very simplified format. And don't worry guys, if you missed the more detailed recaps, they will be back every day starting with Stage 2 this weekend. If you guys like this kind of content, you can show me by leaving a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, help me at 10k subs by the end of the year. And lastly, before we get started, I would like to thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey, a CS2 trading website. You put in the skins that you want to trade, you select what you want, you use my code LionHeartZ for up to $5 off, or click the top link in the description, and boom, new drip.
Nice.
You can also use my code for a 35% deposit bonus if you want to buy with real money. And they have a free section with cool giveaways. So check the top link in the description, use my code to buy 15 Dragon Lores to let them know I sent you their way, and thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Starting things off, I'm very happy to report that FlyQuest beat the allegations and made it out of the stage as one of the 3-0 teams. If you guys aren't aware of what I'm referring to, it's become kind of a joke or curse for FlyQuest that they will go up 2-0 in these group stages very often, but then exit 2-3, not being able to win any of the more serious matchups afterwards. This happened at the Austin Major most notably, and it just seemed like for whatever reason, the best of 3s cursed this team everywhere they went anytime it came around to the major cycle. But after a strong start on Day 1 of the Budapest Major, as we covered in that previous video, they rocked up to their 2-0 advancement match against Fluxo, who were another one of these shock teams to go 2-0 in the best of 1 Swiss. And when you look at the other teams in the 2-0 bucket, I think that FlyQuest really benefited from getting the easiest possible matchup. M80 would have been very difficult, and NRG with Dabs can at least be a wild card that you're not very prepared for. And even though Fluxo is one of the teams to get to this 2-0 game, I'm going to be honest, they are still one of the overall weakest, sketchiest teams in this field. Look no further than the fact that, spoiler alert, they pulled out the FlyQuest, they went 2-0, and then exited the first stage 2-3, losing to Faze today on Thanksgiving. Anyways, this series was a brutalization out of FlyQuest. It was a 2-0 set where Fluxo were unable to put up anything more than 4 combined rounds over both maps. It was 13-1 on Overpass, 13-3 on Inferno. It was like JKS and company walked up and chokeslammed this entire team through a fucking table. Shout out to the not IGL Vegt side for continuing his great performance from Day 1 through into Day 2. He ended the series going 30-20 with a 1.62 rating. Regali topped the score rating-wise with 1.81 performance, and him looking good on the op is going to be pivotal towards FlyQuest's chances of succeeding in the next stage. Moving on, our next 3-0 team, and frankly, I'm happy my pick'ems died for this one. M80 made it to Stage 2 in just 3 games. They looked fantastic the whole way. Day 1 in the best of ones, they were clean, they were concise, Lake led from the front, that was such a great sign. And then we had the NA on NA battle, M80 versus the DAPS-led NRG, so no matter what, an American team was going to get one of those coveted 3-0 spots. And in this battle, M80 were decisive. They beat NRG 13-7 on Dust 2 and 13-7 on Mirage. Unfortunately, a lot of the magic that Daps & Co. brought to the first day simply appeared less and less as this tournament goes on. Spoiler alert, they were also one of those teams who went up 2-0 like Fluxo and exited the tournament 2-3. What was really nice here for M80 is that on the first map, Dust 2, Lake kind of had a quiet start. He ended the game going only 10-11, and Hex T kind of struggled at 12-14, but Swisher and Slax really stepped up to fill that void, both of them dropping 19 kill performances. Swisher especially, it was good to see him play so well, as oftentimes he's come in for criticism as being kind of the supportive piece that lacks behind, but here he really made up for the space that his 2 contemporary star players left behind him. Lake then came alive much more on Mirage, but overall the big vibe for the series was everyone on this team contributed when they had to. There was no need of one hyper carry, they worked well within the system, and they played better man-to-man than NRG did. Our first team to make Stage 2 in the 3-1 bucket were NIP. And NIP I obviously took as one of my 3-0 teams in the pick'ems. They started off their tournament with a shocking loss to NRG as we previously covered, but ended Day 1 with a strong win over Lin Vision. However, I don't think anyone expected them to rock up to day 2 and beat Faze so soundly, even though it was a best of 1. It was a 13-8 victory on Overpass, and don't you worry your pretty little head, the man yells about Faze segment is coming, so I'll hold my breath for right now. But this was a flat-out shocking win for NIP, and one that really buoyed their momentum as they rocked up to day 3, and in their first chance to qualify against Fluxo, they took care of work in 2-0 fashion. Once again, Fluxo really struggling in the best of 3s, and while they did marginally better, that still resulted in duplicate 13-5 scorelines on both Nuke and Train. On Nuke, it was Kaspersky who really lit the scoreboard up, going 23-8 with a 1.84 rating, but shout out to Shush and Ujerks, who also played excellently as well. Ujerks especially, who was one of the more criticized pieces on this lineup. It was nice to see him look kind of like what we saw in his Saw days. And he continued that momentum onto Train, where he went nuclear once again, this time for a monstrous 20-5 scoreline with a 1.85 rating. This was a rare moment where NIP's firepower really shone bright, and Snappy's leadership was tight, well coordinated, and well thought out, and frankly when me and Tony saw the potential for NIP to go 3-0, it was this version of NIP that impressed so many people earlier on in the season, but they failed to find as of late. So going into stage 2, I'm feeling much better about NIP, and I expect them to be a little bit dangerous, if not flat out underrated, amongst the stage 2's many inconsistent teams. Following NIP, we had one of the most picked 3-0 teams who failed to meet expectations, but thankfully they got through in the end in Bait. As we covered in the day 1 video, they took a shocking loss to M80 and then had a scary close game against the Huns afterwards. On day 2, they found themselves in the third and final round of best of 1 Swiss against Paravision, where once again, it was a very close affair on Inferno, going all 24 rounds before Bait could get the victory. Paravision are an interesting team in their own right, and I'll certainly be giving them more flowers later on in this video. But it's safe to say, in terms of impressions, people heavily favored Bait in this matchup. Unfortunately, Headtrick and MPL having kind of so-so performances really threw up a lot of rounds into question, and had Essential and Conciser not dropped 22 and 20 kills respectively, this game could have definitely been in the hands of Paravision, which may have put Bait on a very precipitous slope. Instead, they get to go to the 2-1 bracket, where they took on Legacy and surprisingly beat them soundly 2-0. It was a very close affair on Dust 2, where Bait eventually took the win with a clean sweep in overtime. Really, the big thing that stands out to me was the difference in clutch factor. Legacy are a team we've lauded many times on this channel as being one of the most clutch, frankly, in the world, but here they went 0-3 in clutch attempts against Bait. Those rounds could have been crucial to this game not even going to overtime in the first place. It wasn't like there was a massive underperformance from the individuals on Legacy, but that difference in clutch timing from Bait really proved to be pivotal. And as is prone to happen after close first maps, Mirage was frankly a gentleman's sweep that Bait took very strongly 13-5, Kensizor leading them to victory. Neeson and Lux really struggled here, having 4 and 6 kills respectively, and that just left too big of a gap in firepower for the rest of Legacy to overcome. Our last team making it out with only 1 loss were Fnatic. And frankly, Fnatic had kind of a weird first day of the major. They had to go deep into overtime to beat Red Canids 16-14. Then they got blasted out of the server by Fluxo 13-9. So they pulled up to the 3rd stage of the best of 1 Swiss, where they had to play Imperial, and here they flipped the switch very strongly with a 13-3 victory on Train. Jambo had a huge pop-off going 19-8 for the map, 15 of those coming on the 10-2 CT side first half. And this led to a climactic showdown. Best of 3 against NRG. The first map on Mirage, NRG stunned everybody with a 13-3 stomp. Fucking Daps top frags going 15-6 with a 1.86 rating, which by the way, yes, you might have heard this on Twitter, is true. That is Daps' highest rated individual map on LAN in his entire career. That is so awesome, bro. That's just straight up sick. Unfortunately, I think Daps has similar limitations to current Gear 5 Luffy, as once they got to the 2nd and 3rd map in the series, I think his powers ran out, and he became once again a withered old man. We start off on Inferno, where Fnatic took the win here 13-10, Daps falling back to earth 5-18, yikes. Meanwhile, BlameF and Jacasmo going 23 and 20 kills respectively. Exotic had himself a great map as well, really dueling toe-to-toe with Fnatic stars, however it ultimately wasn't enough. And then on Dust 2, Fnatic closed out the series with a 13-9 win. Once again, Jacasmo leading from the front, 23 kills, 15 deaths, and a 1.64 rating. And it definitely hurts to be in Daps' position, because after that explosive first map win, what do you do? Inferno, 0.45 rating, Dust 2, a 0.59. A catastrophic fall off when his team desperately needed it, And frankly, I think this ultimately cost NRG the most realistic chance to progress, as the momentum that they had been building after the Mirage win, frankly, wouldn't be replicated. But again, more on them in just a second. BlameF and company, they're through to stage 2. Still a very hard team to read most days, but BlameF is certainly good enough to keep this team going. I just want to see him be on a real roster soon. With that, it's time to talk about Faze. I'm going to be flat out honest. I think it's actually bad for Faze to have made it to stage 2. I think it is better long-term for this roster to have failed spectacularly and really take a heartfelt look in the mirror and consider what's next, then fluke their way through the stage 2 off the back of quote-unquote Faze magic and or bullshit. Because let's be honest, this is one of the most pitiful major appearances that this Faze clan of any iteration has ever made. After the embarrassing start to day 1, after losing to NRG in the second round of Swiss, they wake up day 2, go into the last best of 1 for stage 1, and they get rocked by ninjas in fucking pajamas, which for as much as I like that team, are not better than Faze. And just what really hurts about watching this Faze team, and what ages me 50 years every single match that I have to sit through at this point, is the inconsistencies. One moment, Frozen is excellent. The other moment, he's going 9-14 against NIP. Jacob will sometimes look all right, and then go 8-16 here. Kerrigan, despite all criticisms, ends up being relatively consistent in his own output, and we all know what the fuck Brokey can do on a good day. And the flat out embarrassing fact is that against both Red Canids and Fluxo, Faze only got away by the fact that those teams are green, unproven, and not as used to pressure of closing out series in the way Faze are. Faze's actual individual performance was awful. They got slapped 13-7 on Mirage. Admittedly, Kerrigan was awful here, 4-17. Brokey not much better at 10-14. And it's just a gigantic tough pill to swallow watching fucking Faze with Twists and fucking Frozen getting stomped on their T-sides by Kawez and fucking History. And flat out on Nuke, the Red Canids probably should have won. It really was right there. It went to double overtime before Faze bullshit managed to prevail once again. The only reason it got to overtime is because it came down to a 1v1 clutch on the B bomb site that Kerrigan converted. He nearly lost to the player defusing on the Astralis plant, and good God, would I not been able to suffer through the Twitter discourse of Kerrigan flunking the 1v1 that sends Faze home. But in classic Faze bullshit fashion, they get clean swept by a dominant CT side to start off overtime from Red Canids. So they are now down 15-12, staring down the barrel of a humiliating elimination, and then what do Faze do? In classic fashion, they win 3 straight CT rounds of their own and force double OT, then nearly fuck it up again to Red Canid's CT side in the second OT frame, only to win 4 rounds straight through the end of the first and into the second half of that overtime to win the fucking game. And then, because it's Faze, of course they dominate Inferno 13-5 to close out the series, but my God, was my asshole putting down the weight and pressure of a fucking Quark star the entire time. Oh, and by the way, what was almost lost in that rant was that the only reason they were competitive on that Nuke game was Frozen putting up one of his all-time best performances, going for 39 fucking kills and a 1.96 rating. He was a backpacking Faze through the vast majority of these rounds. So already, I'm like, let's just eliminate Faze. It'll be better. We can ship Brokey to Gamer Legion. We can just start over, start something fresh. And then Faze go on to play Fluxo. Art, one of my least favorite IGLs in the world to watch. I was ready to experience peak cringe. They had a dominant win on Inferno. Faze did 13-6, which gave me a little bit of hope. And then they got fucking boomsticked by Fluxo's Nuke 13-7. And then we pull up to Mirage, and Faze put in a... Really? Faze put in a just classic, dreadful T-side. They couldn't get into a bomb site to save their fucking lives. They dropped to an 8-4 deficit through the first half, and then Fluxo on their T-side won the pistol and converted the second round, going up 10-4, with Faze looking yet again dead and fucking buried, and me losing my goddamn mind. The only problem in this whole narrative was nobody, not even Faze, could have expected Fluxo to literally hang themselves with their own fucking rope, as they put in one of the most wretched T-sides on Mirage I have ever fucking seen. I am not kidding. I would trust a team with fucking Electronic as the IGL and Snax as the coach, with Taz as the advisor, to call better T-side sets than Fluxo did in the second half of this game. They just kept walking through smokes, walking through nades, walking into bullets, and generally speaking, walking their ass into an early grave. From a 10-4 lead, they conceded the entire game and series and lost 13-10. How the fuck can that happen? Including them being up 2v4 with Kerrigan getting a 4K retake to win the series. Which again, my GOAT Kerrigan, if you think Kerrigan's the problem, you're an idiot. But still, is this not the most hollow victory possible? Faze still nearly got eliminated by Red Canids and fucking Fluxo. Going into stage 2, I have no hope. I have no cope. I have nothing left to offer. There are no expectations for Faze, because how can you expect anything out of a roster that is 2/3 dead? How is Kerrigan supposed to be a good IGL when on any given day Brokey and Jacob are worthless to middle lane at best? There is no Faze magic. There is no Faze at majors. God is dead. We killed him. And now we must pay for our sins with Faze exiting stage left in stage 2. Anyways, with the Faze rant done, we'll speed through the last little bit of this video so I can get ready for the rest of my Thanksgiving dinner. Imperial qualified 3-2 on the last day as well. After their day 1 up and down performance, they opened up day 2 with a 13-3 loss to Fnatic. And from there, facing elimination, Imperial took care of work beating the Huns in 2 games, as well as NRG. Against the Huns, it was a 13-8 affair on Nuke, where Imperial started off very hot, but Mirage proved to be a much closer affair, having to go into overtime before Imperial could clean sweep it for a victory. Shout out to Cello and Tri, they were godlike through this series, and Imperial really needed that star power difference to get this one over the line. And finally today, NRG's luck fully ran out, as they could not even get to double digits on either map against Imperial. It was frankly a pitiful last whimper for this team that impressed so much on day 1, as they fell to Imperial 13-8 on Nuke and then 13-5 on Train. Frankly, neither of these games were remotely competitive, as none of Daps, Bro, or Sonic failed to get 20 combined kills apiece over both maps, and that left NRG with just a huge gap in firepower that no way led his team through very swiftly. An unfortunate end for NRG, and Imperial are a team that I'm just meh about them. I don't expect them to do much in stage 2. They are one of the least interesting Brazilian teams in my opinion, but hey, you made it through stage 1. And our final team making it through to stage 2, coming in on the last game of the day, were Paravision, who just wrapped up a marathon close game against Legacy, with things going to overtime on the final map Dust 2 before we walked away with Paravision the victor. After their 1-1 start on day 1, on day 2 they rocked up to the 3rd round best of 1 Swiss and got beat by Bait, as we already talked about. Then in the best of 3s with their back against the line, they 2-0 Gamer Legion, having to go to overtime on both Overpass and Ancient, which was heartbreaking for this Gamer Legion core to suffer through, as both games were relatively competitive, but at the final moment, Jame would have the master stroke call or the great clutch to really pull things around in his favor. Even though there were moments from Gamer Legion that were really inspiring, Hypix had that really great clutch in overtime on the B site with the op in his hands, one of the rare highlights he had for the entire event, but it wasn't ultimately enough to spur his team forward into victory. Rez and PR frankly didn't play up to par throughout multiple points in this event, and that general up and down nature of their firepower burned them at the very end. I have mixed thoughts about Paravision, because at the same time, there's a lot of James DNA over this calling that I frankly still really dislike to watch as a casual viewer. His save heavy passive style is still here at points, but it is also, to be credited, exciting to see him work with such a young core of players who I think innately want to play a little more contact and aggressive heavy. This team's really rough around the edges, but sometimes when it works, you get surprising moments out of these younger players like Belchinok, Noda, Jello, I think that's how you pronounce it, and AW, but overall, again, rough around the edges is the perfect way to describe it, as there's so many inconsistencies when watching this team game to game. Jame is still their best player and their IGL, and frankly, I think that gives them a very hard ceiling. They need a young, breakout player to bring in some real, true star firepower. But at least here, against Gamer Legion, and especially against Legacy, this team was durable, and with the great calling from Dastan behind them, they were able to get through many big moments, coming out of timeouts looking stronger. Overall, I'm impressed, but I don't really know what the limit is for this Paravision roster. And then this final series against Legacy, frankly, go watch that final map on Dust 2, an absolute banger closer, double overtime. Legacy had multiple chances to close out the series, but key mistakes, good clutches out of Paravision really kept them alive. James' calling in general was very smart, very measured, and just came down to just moments where individuals really had to be the difference maker. Neeson had a very notable flank that went awry that ultimately cost Legacy a lot of momentum, for example. And just overall, it sucks that Legacy goes out here, but at least it was like a banger series on the way out. They didn't just like fade into the dust. We'll talk about Legacy more in just a minute, but overall, congrats to Paravision for getting through. Stage 1 and all its fucking chaos is finally over. Let's talk about the teams who didn't make it. Let's start off with NRG. Obviously, the story of the major through day 1, then Daps rocks up against Fnatic, has his career best map on that first map on Mirage, and then they peter out, they lose that series, and they fail to win any of their best of 3s after the fact, and frankly go out with kind of a whimper on the last day. That was definitely a comeback to earth moment for NRG, and really at the end of the day, I'm sad because they showed a lot of promise from the other players, but ultimately, what are you going to do in this circumstance? You don't have your in-game leader. Dow's talks about in every interview how stripped back and different the playbook is to accommodate the standard situation. Frankly, they were playing for vibes, and through the first day, the vibes were good. Unfortunately, the vibes ran out, and NRG proved to be a bit of a paper tiger. It sucks, but Exotic proves to be kind of an interesting player to keep an eye on. This is really one of my first looks at him on an international setting in a while, and he looked really good by the eye test, so we'll see how this develops with their actual lineup over the next couple of months. And while NRG had some good stuff to hang their hats on, really, there's nothing good to be said for Gamer Legion. This was a very poor performance from them. I and many others had them going through in some combination of 3-2 or 3-1. Instead, they only win one best of 3 series against Rare Atom. Other than that, they failed to win any other map in any other series they played. The Paravision series was so close, but they couldn't get it over the line. Rez had a very up and down tournament, so did PR. Hypex doesn't really look like he's landed, and then most distressing of all are the rumors hanging over this roster about them getting post to 100 Thieves. If Townsend, Rez, and PR move on, can Ash pull another rabbit out of his hat and rebuild? Who knows? How many times can he continue to do that before simply he misses on a bigger scouting project? It can't be easy to watch a core walk away, be left to pick up the pieces. ZTR is proving to be kind of a stalled out IGL as well. His development has really slowed down this year. It leaves a lot of questions for Gamer Legion heading into the offseason, and frankly, I don't know if I'm good enough to answer them, but all I can say is this was a massive disappointment given the quality of competition here, and Gamer Legion's season ends on a bit of a whimper. And then finally, Legacy, who were many people's, myself included. I believe the vast majority of people picked Legacy to go 3-0. Instead, they get eliminated on the final day 2-3. They had that very tough opening loss to FlyQuest on Train, which felt like just a bad veto choice from the very beginning. They bounced back by beating weaker teams like Rare Atom and Red Canids in the best of ones, but in the best of 3s, they came against Bait, a team they've beaten in the past and I would consider to be better than most of the time, but they failed to take a map there, and then they get eliminated just now when I'm recording this by Paravision, in frankly heartbreaking fashion, considering this was a team that struck out and won one of their first tournaments ever, a 1.5 event against relatively similar competition to this. They were a team that could have gone to stage 2 and frankly done some damage there. Instead, they failed to find their form. Had they won on that first day in that first match against FlyQuest, who knows what changes. The Legacy, they didn't bring their A game. Really, they didn't even bring much of their B game. It was just an underperformance at the worst point in the season. And frankly, they are the biggest disappointment of the first stage, as this was a team that could be seen as a dark horse in some respects. Instead, they are out immediately. And with that, we bring stage 1 to a close. Stage 2 begins on Saturday, and tomorrow, you guys can expect a pick'ems video for stage 2 featuring me and the glorious Mr. Handsome Tony. This time, we're not even going to try to make objective analytical picks. We're going to embrace chaos, so keep an eye out for that. If you guys like this kind of content, show me leaving a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. How many tickets by the end of the year? Also, thank you to Skins Monkey for sponsoring this video. Check the top link in the description, go try on their website. Let us know I sent you their way. Thank you to Skins Monkey. Thank you to my channel members, Jesse, Milan Berta, Bubblesj, Dr. Cody Foxworthy, PTR, B1K, Cody Foxworthy, JesseTiv, I'm Flashbang, Snowy White, Rowdy, LBKcs, Snax Enjoyer, Zerotwocs, drudenae, Chron, Gano, Zyro, Devvrat Singh, Clyde Mead, AlexF, and ZSabre. If you want me to come in, channel member, do so links down below. Follow me on Twitter, Discord, follow me on Twitch, LionHeartZ. I'll see you guys soon in another video. Peace.